Welcome, LCR members. Last week, you received a letter from Dan Lizdas, our church council president, and me, regarding a process to reopen LCR to face-to-face worship. This video is designed to share with you more detail about that process. Please note that as we transition back to face-to-face worship, all the virtual worship and educational experiences will continue to be offered online. Both the council and the staff understand how important it is to return to this sanctuary and worship God here together. We also understand the importance of the safety and well-being of every member of LCR, particularly the most vulnerable ones among us. We believe the process we have started will honor both of those understandings. Dan, share with us some of the thinking that has gone into this process and the guidelines we're using to move worship forward at LCR.
Sure. Thank you, Pastor Dave. Hello, everyone. And let me start off by saying that I hope you're all healthy, safe, and doing well. I miss seeing all of you and look forward to seeing you in the near future. You've all received the letter that Pastor Dave mentioned, and I hope you took some time to read it. Now I'd like to talk to you a bit about the process that we followed to develop these guidelines. As all of you know, for most of us, probably all of us, this is the first time in our lives that we've gone through a pandemic. There's no scripted playbook and no set of answers to solve all of the questions of how we start to return to even some degree of normalcy. So I want to walk you through that process that we've followed just so you understand it. First, we've been heavily leveraging the work of the Southeastern Synod. The executive team and myself have attended multiple Zoom calls where Bishop Strickland and his team shared guidance with church leaders from around the Synod. The Synod has a COVID-19 task force that is comprised of experts in various fields, including public health. The Synod's task force has created a 29-page document that's titled Guidelines for a Phased Transition to Our New Normal in the Midst of COVID-19. That document, along with recent CDC guidance for communities of faith, form the foundation of LCR's plans to transition back to face-to-face worship. These documents are available online. You can get the Synod document online at the Synod website, or the CDC document I referred to online on the CDC website. If you can't find them there, I'd be happy to share them with you if you are interested to see them more. Within LCR, here at LCR, Pastor Dave, Allison, and myself developed the initial strategy for our plan to return to face-to-face worship. It was reviewed in detail with the staff, and then the executive team and the full council also reviewed it, and we've had a couple different council meetings for them to provide input, and ultimately their unanimous approval for the plan. So that's a little bit about the process that we followed. Now I'm going to walk you through the safety protocols. They were outlined in the letter. However, I think it's important to walk through them again because these important protocols will apply throughout all the plans for us to return to face-to-face worship. And it's critically important that all of us follow them, or else we risk the plan not working, or ultimately that plan coming to a halt. And there's really 5 central elements to that. One is social distancing will be maintained inside and outside of the sanctuary. So we're all familiar with 6 feet apart, and we'll be asking all of you to comply with that. Masks will be required for all people 2 years of age and older. And if you don't have one, we will provide them for you here at church. Hand sanitizing stations will be provided throughout the narthex and sanctuary. And we're going to be having appropriate cleaning of the sanctuary that'll be taking place prior to each worship experience. So in between each worship service, the sanctuary and narthex will be thoroughly cleaned. And then the last piece is that it's expected that anyone feeling sick would remain home and worship using the virtual experience, which, as we mentioned, will continue. And the last piece I'll talk about before I hand it back to Pastor Dave is around benchmarks. And one of the components of our strategy is having benchmarks to determine if and when we are ready to transition to face-to-face worship. We've talked about it before, but the situation is very fluid, And we're monitoring the situation closely to determine if we need to adjust our timing for returning to worship. The benchmark we're looking for is a sustained reduction or stability in new cases of COVID for 14 days as an indicator if we're ready to transition to face-to-face worship. And these were guidelines straight from the Synod's COVID-19 task force. While it's not exactly a formulaic decision, I wanted to share with you two websites that we are following closely to inform our decision, and I would encourage you to take a look at those as well. The first one the website is www.covidexitstrategy.org, and that website uses criteria that was developed by the White House, and it tracks each state's progress towards its reduction in symptoms and cases, health system readiness, and increased testing. The data is updated daily, and again, I'd encourage you to review it. I'll tell you right now, as of today, Georgia is labeled red, meaning it's trending poorly, largely due to the 14-day trend of positive COVID tests being up 9%. We'll continue to monitor that closely because, as you can imagine, that moves around from day to day. The second website that we've been looking at, and we will continue, and I'd encourage you to look at, is the Georgia Department of Public Health website. Lots of great information there, including you could see the ability to see COVID trends by county. So in addition to the overall state trends, we've been looking closely to see how Cobb and Fulton is trending. And now I'll hand it back over to Pastor Dave to talk about what you can expect when we return to face-to-face worship.
Thanks, Dan. So now let's take a closer look at what you can expect when face-to-face worship begins, reminding of Dan's words, we hope the weekend of July 11th and 12th, depending on the numbers. Let's pray that they begin to turn around. We will be offering two identical worship services, Saturday at 5 o'clock and Sunday morning at 11. We choose these two times so that the sanctuary can be cleaned in between the two services. Please note that Resurrection Hour will be moved from 9:30 until 9 o'clock on July the 12th in order to allow for travel time to the 11 o'clock worship service. As Dan suggested, because social distancing is so critical for the safety and well-being of our members, we are limiting the number of people in worship to 50. In order to maintain that number, we are asking that you make reservations and let us know in advance which service you are coming to and how many people will be coming with you. Dan will be saying more about that in a few moments. Holy Communion is such a vital part of Lutheran worship, and I want you to know it will be offered at both services. We are planning to use only the wafers, however, as a way of further guaranteeing your safety and mitigating against social contact. When you arrive at LCR, ushers will meet you and take you to your seats. Those seats will be assigned in order that we can meet the social distancing requirements. After worship, those ushers will then escort you from the sanctuary. Instrumental and pre-recorded music will enhance our worshiping together. However, we are asking that all of us refrain from singing, again, helping to guarantee the safety of all worshipers. For safety reasons, all pew items have been removed. No bulletins will be used, and the entire service will be put up on screens. Offerings can be placed in containers in the narthex as you leave worship. And we would ask that for your safety and the safety of your sisters and brothers in faith, social distancing be kept as long as you remain on the grounds of LCR. As Dan suggested, the use of masks will be required for all people 2 years of age and older, And again, for safety reasons, we would ask that all of us use those masks from when we arrive at LCR to when we leave. The use of bathrooms will be limited to one person at a time, again, for safety reasons. And we have made both bathrooms unisex to facilitate that process. Parents, you are asked to accompany your children. Dan, I think there are a couple of other items that should be mentioned at this time. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Pastor Dave. I've got 2 or 3 other things that I'd like to walk you through as we get ready to move back towards face-to-face worship. The first one is the schedule. So starting this Sunday, June 14th through Sunday, July 5th, we're going to continue to offer a worship experience, but it's going to be recorded right here in the sanctuary. And doing that, we're going to limit the number of participants in the sanctuary to 4 or 5 people that will actually be working on the production of that virtual worship experience. And the service will be premiered on YouTube Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Starting Saturday, July 11th at 5 p.m. and Sunday, July 12th at 11 a.m. we'll begin to offer the face-to-face worship service in the sanctuary. And the live stream service will continue even when we return to face-to-face worship. Resurrection hour will remain virtual and will move to 9 a.m. in order to give people time to get to worship. It's important to remember that while we are in this phase, that the rest of the buildings on campus are closed. We still need to work through planning for future phases when we start to reopen other buildings. It's also important to remember that when it comes to worship, you have a choice. You can join us for in-person worship starting on July 11th, or if you're not quite ready to do that yet, you could still participate in the virtual worship service. We remain fully committed to doing both in-person and virtual worship. The next item I want to talk to you a little bit about is the signing up or the scheduling or the reservation process. As Pastor Dave mentioned, we'll be capping worship attendance at 50 in order to maintain social distancing in the sanctuary. In order to do that in an orderly fashion, we'll have a sign-up process. We'll be asking everyone to sign up in advance in order to create a seating chart that ensures we all stay safely 6 feet apart. This will be done electronically, and for those of you that don't have access to a computer, you can call the office to make your reservation. This is a new process for all of us, and I would just ask for your patience and cooperation as we strive to keep us all safe and healthy as we begin to carefully return to face-to-face worship. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is around a survey. In the very near future, we're going to be sending out a survey. And we want to hear from you as far as what you're thinking about your plans will be as we return to face-to-face worship. The more we know about your plans, the better we can plan for the congregation. We'll be doing this survey both electronically and a hard copy for those of you that don't have access to a computer. And now I'll hand it back to Pastor Dave for some closing thoughts.
Thanks again, Dan. Ladies and gentlemen, I've missed you. I really enjoyed worshiping with you virtually these last few weeks. But I've missed seeing you, interacting with you, sharing Christian fellowship with you as the body of Christ together. I am very much looking forward to coming back with you to worship. And I am praying, and I hope you will join me, that the COVID-19 numbers and trends will allow us to keep the schedule that Dan just shared. We will, of course, let you know of any changes to that schedule should they occur. We are sisters and brothers of Jesus Christ together. We are called to worship God together as the giver of all grace and the source of all love. We are also called to care for each other the way Jesus has cared for us. I believe the process we have begun to put in place can and will honor both of those callings. The best way to honor God is to worship. And in the COVID-19 pandemic, the best way to show hospitality to each other is to guard and guarantee, as best we can, the safety and well-being of all of us. So together, let's do both of those. And in doing so, let us once again see and celebrate the presence of the living God in the world and in each other.